Hello, it's Red Recap speaking. Today, I will be giving a rundown of the movie Silencer, which was released in 2018. Please note that there will be spoilers in my review. Without further ado, let's dive into the film. The film kicks off by giving us a glimpse of a team of American snipers in charge of a mission to extract the head of a terrorist faction from Iraq. This Iraqi individual sought protection from the American soldiers due to the belief that they held crucial intel advantageous to them. Concurrently, we witness various members of the extremist organization covertly making their way towards the rendezvous point. Evidently, they were not about to let their leader fall into the hands of the United States soldiers without a fight. Their objective was clear: hinder the United States soldiers' operations, and a primary target was to neutralize the sniper squad. In a strategic move, the terrorist group successfully pinpointed and eliminated one of the snipers. As the situation escalated, they managed to corner the squad, leaving Frank, the leader of the American snipers, with no choice but to resort to an impromptu and drastic measure, executing the terrorist leader along with his family. A decade has gone by since that fateful incident. Frank, who's long since bid farewell to his military service, doesn't shy away from acknowledging that the shooting episode still lingers in his thoughts, a burden too heavy to share with anyone. Having transitioned out of the armed forces, Frank now invests a significant portion of his days tending to his auto repair shop, his means of making a living meet. On this particular day, after completing a repair job on a customer's vehicle, Frank and one of his employees were preparing to return the car to its rightful owner. As the evening settled in, Frank, now residing with his wife, Cassie, and stepdaughter, Shannon, gathered around the table for dinner. During the meal, Cassie expressed her desire for a weekend getaway with both Shannon and Frank. However, when Frank explained that he needed to personally deliver a customer's recently repaired car, Cassie was adamant about accompanying him, insisting she join him on the trip. Despite his reservations, Frank eventually relented to Cassie's persistent request, allowing both her and Shannon to accompany him. This decision left him slightly apprehensive, given that the customer in question was none other than a former associate, now a notorious crime lord. Upon arriving at the crime lord's residence, a series of unexpected events unfolded. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Frank found himself in a confrontation with one of the crime lord's henchmen, leading to an intense altercation. Shortly thereafter, a man by the name of Lazarus, known as the crime lord's right hand, swiftly appeared on the scene and promptly took charge. Lazarus then escorted Frank to meet the formidable crime lord, Leo. In a surprising turn of events, Frank was handed an envelope brimming with cash, well beyond what was needed for the car repairs. It became evident that Leo had intentionally provided an excessive sum, hinting at his ulterior motive. He sought to entice Frank back into his employ, this time as a hired assassin. In spite of the tempting offer, Frank stood his ground and declined. Surprisingly, Leo insisted and handed over the envelope of cash before letting Frank depart. Nonetheless, a lingering desire to rejoin Leo's ranks remained within Frank. However, the newfound presence of his family weighed heavily on his mind. Accepting Leo's proposition would undoubtedly put Cassie and Shannon in jeopardy, a risk Frank was unwilling to take. As evening fell, Frank sat glued to the television, absorbing a program reporting the tragic news of Leo's daughter falling victim to a hit-and-run, resulting in her untimely demise. The revelation struck Frank deeply, knowing just how much Leo cherished his daughter. Before long, Lazarus paid Frank a visit, delivering a message from Leo himself. The crime lord sought Frank's assistance in seeking vengeance for the loss of his beloved daughter. This unexpected turn of events left Frank facing a moral dilemma. Initially, Frank staunchly declined, reluctant to re-enter the perilous realm of gangsters. Yet, when faced with Lazarus' menacing ultimatum, he found himself with no alternative. Meanwhile, Cassie observed the arrival of Lazarus and Leo's henchmen at their residence, prompting her to question the untimely visit. Frank, however, chose to keep the details from her, leading to her frustration and an impulsive slap. Despite her anger, he remained resolute and departed with Lazarus, leaving a bewildered Cassie behind. Upon reaching Leo's residence, Frank was met with the sight of a grieving and anguished Leo, still reeling from the loss of his daughter. Leo implored Frank to exact revenge on the perpetrator responsible for the hit-and-run. In a grim turn, Leo held a formidable threat over Frank's head, warning that he would divulge Frank's ominous history to Cassie should he refuse. Driven by a deep-seated desire to shield his wife from the darker aspects of his past, Frank ultimately acquiesced to Leo's plea, setting a fateful course of action into motion. The following day, Lazarus provided Frank with comprehensive documentation on the hit-and-run perpetrator, enabling him to swiftly embark on his mission. It didn't take Frank long to pinpoint the whereabouts of the wrongdoer. With a steely determination, he hastened to position himself, meticulously preparing his sniper rifle for the imminent action. As Frank laid eyes on the perpetrator, nestled in the bosom of his family at home, a flood of memories surged back. It was a haunting reminder of the tragic error he had committed a decade ago, a burden that still gnawed at his conscience. Resolute not to repeat that grievous misstep, Frank chose a different path. He opted against taking the life of the hit-and-run perpetrator and instead opted to let the police apprehend him, seeking justice through lawful means. Unbeknownst to Frank, Leo had discreetly assigned one of his men to shadow him, relaying every move back to Leo. When Leo learned of Frank's decision not to take matters into his own hands and instead let the authorities handle the hit-and-run perpetrator, he was incensed. In a chilling turn of events, Leo then instructed Lazarus to carry out a harrowing command, to eliminate both the perpetrator and Frank. The stakes had escalated dramatically, putting Frank in grave peril. In a horrifying turn of events, Cassie, alone at home, was taken aback by the sudden arrival of Lazarus and Leo's henchmen. Tragically, she fell victim to a gunshot, and to make matters worse, her daughter Shannon was abducted. Simultaneously, Lazarus and his cohort successfully seized the hit-and-run perpetrator from police custody, whisking him away to a grim fate, sanctioned by Leo for a torturous demise. In the midst of this chaos, Frank returned home, only to be met with the heart-wrenching sight of his injured wife. Fueled by panic and concern, he swiftly scooped her up, determined to get Cassie the medical attention she urgently needed. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Frank as he raced against time. Seeking aid in this dire situation, Frank sought out his former colleague from the sniper squad, Timothy, and implored him to assist in rescuing Shannon from her captors. Fortuitously, Timothy agreed to join forces with Frank in this critical mission. Upon reaching the hospital, Frank was met with the heartrending sight of Cassie, clearly devastated by the horrifying turn of events that had befallen her and their daughter. Cassie's emotions ran high, a mix of anguish and anger towards Frank, who she felt had concealed the truth and ultimately led to this calamity. In a bid to make amends, Frank approached Cassie, offering a heartfelt apology for the deception. He pledged to her that he, alongside Timothy, would spare no effort in ensuring Shannon's safe return, urging Cassie to find solace and rest during this trying time. Arriving at Leo's residence in haste, Frank and Timothy were met with an unsettling sight. Leo and Lazarus were conspicuously absent, and Shannon was nowhere to be found. Their search yielded only one remaining henchman. While Timothy successfully subdued him, a sudden turn of events led to a perilous confrontation. Faced with imminent danger, the henchman made a desperate attempt to retrieve his firearm, forcing Timothy to make a swift, life-or-death decision. In a moment of intense pressure, he acted on instinct, taking the man's life, inadvertently complicating their quest for information on Shannon's whereabouts. The turn of events only deepened the urgency of their mission. In the midst of his profound grief over his daughter's demise, Leo took Shannon to his hometown. Despite Leo's efforts to care for her with kindness, treating her as if she were his own, Shannon couldn't shake the fear that gripped her, yearning to be reunited with her mother. Meanwhile, Leo's wife, Marta, grew increasingly troubled by her husband's actions. She saw his decision to abduct Shannon as an extreme measure and earnestly implored him to bring an end to this ordeal. Regrettably, Leo remained resolute, disregarding his wife's pleas, consumed by his own anguish and determination. The tension within Leo's family only added to the complexity of the situation. Having been in Leo's employ for a significant duration, Frank possessed invaluable knowledge about the potential sources of information regarding Leo and Lazarus. Together with Timothy, he set their sights on one of Leo's major drug facilities in Mexico, recognizing it as a prime location to incapacitate Leo's henchmen and glean vital intel about Shannon's location. Simultaneously, Lazarus, shrewd and forewarned, foresaw Frank's pursuit. In response, he issued a grave directive to one of his most formidable enforcers, a man known as Nelson, tasking him with the mission to eliminate Frank. The stakes were escalating rapidly, with danger lurking at every turn. In a stroke of luck, Frank tracked down Nelson at a local bar, catching him off guard. With calculated force, Frank confronted Nelson, compelling him to divulge Shannon's location. Meanwhile, Timothy swiftly dealt with the remainder of Leo's henchmen. Once they obtained the crucial information, Frank made the difficult decision to end Nelson's life. Armed with the knowledge of where Shannon was being held captive at Leo's residence, Frank and Timothy prepared themselves for the impending confrontation. Their determination was unwavering as they braced to face Leo and his formidable cohort, all for the sake of rescuing Shannon. As Lazarus mobilized his forces to fortify Leo's residence, intending to thwart any potential infiltration, he underestimated the prowess of Frank and Timothy, both seasoned professionals in the art of sniping. In the ensuing skirmish, Lazarus and his men found themselves outmatched, succumbing to Frank and Timothy's strategic prowess. Regrettably, the victory came at a cost. Timothy sustained severe injuries, forcing Frank to forge ahead alone. Sensing the tides turning against them, Leo recognized the imminent threat and rushed to seize Shannon, brandishing a firearm in a desperate bid to escape. The stakes were higher than ever, with Shannon's safety hanging in the balance. In a climactic confrontation, Frank confronted Leo, imploring him to release Shannon, offering to spare his life in return. Marta, witnessing the dire situation, made a heartfelt plea, urging Leo to let Shannon go, reminding him that she had her own family who cared deeply for her. Unfortunately, Leo remained obstinate, intent on attacking Frank. In a daring move, Shannon seized a moment of distraction and bit Leo's hand, diverting his attention momentarily. Seizing this fleeting opportunity, Frank swiftly hurled a knife, striking Leo's heart with deadly precision. The act brought an end to Leo's reign of terror. With Shannon now safe, Frank fulfilled his promise to Cassie, who had found forgiveness in her heart and embraced Frank for who he was. Together, they began the process of healing and rebuilding, grateful for the chance to move forward as a family once more. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thanks and see you again soon. Take care.